deforestation and overall planetary destruction, often fueled by profits.
Surprisingly, some people, including politicians, still talk as if the climate crisis is something in the future. If we continue on this reckless, suicidal path that we are, we will be gone as a species.
Some argue that it's Africa's time to benefit from its resources.
Africa has its own unique problems: poverty, infrastructure, unemployment. We have, countries completely in a collapsed state.
Government claims to be committed to a just transition to renewable energy, but at the highest level, not everyone seems to be on board.
We are cautioning people who say coal is coming to an end. We have 16 power stations that are coal generated. That is the reality that we face today as we sit here.
Government is extending the life of some of our dirtiest power stations, while young activists are calling for an extinction rebellion to save humanity. Nondle Mbutuma received global recognition for blocking offshore exploration by the multinational oil company Shell in the Wild Coast.
Development really must be determined by our children's future, not by corporate profit.
Even where South Africa has brought in renewable energy, the projects are often owned by foreign banks and their profits are removed from the country. Some communities have a unique solution to the problem of coal, corruption, and concentration of energy ownership. Residents in Impumalweni Township in the Highveld region of Mpumalanga are harnessing solar power to build a brighter and sustainable future.
Our government is failing us. It's been years I've been staying here, but it's still the same. We still don't have electricity, we still don't have water. Because I don't have electricity, I use the VEM solar system. There are a lot of people who are using that solar system, and they are very happy. They are very much happy.
For the first time ever, this community has an uninterrupted supply of electricity. Yet despite this progress, residents are still faced with pollution from nearby coal mines.
My sister's son, he grew up with asthma. He was diagnosed with asthma when he was 2 months, so he had to use the pumps. They called us at around 11, and when we got there, they showed us his body and he was already gone.
Mina njengami ukuthi umoya ungcolile angitshelwa umuntu.
We can't afford to be timid anymore. We've got to be bold and daring.
Community members hope that the new energy projects will lead to a healthier and more prosperous future. But government and business will have to come on board.
There is an alternative. And it's an alternative that is rising from voices within the labor movement, local environmental activists, a variety of ordinary people who realize that the planet needs to be protected for our own good and collective benefit.
Let's bring in the panel now. Professor Samson Mampoli, let me start with you. So if coal is bad for the environment, why have we even extended the lifespan of some of the coal-fired power stations all the way up to 2030 in some instances?
Yeah, so maybe I need to explain in detail what the minister was saying there. So South Africa is pursuing an energy mix, which basically means that our energy mix is going to contain coal, nuclear, renewables. And in terms of, we have an energy plan, which is called the Integrated Resource Plan, that guides us in terms of how much of each of the technologies should contribute in our energy mix. We're facing an energy crisis that we need to deal with. We have learned from some of the developed world, some of the developed countries such as China, to say when you are in a crisis, you first deal with the crisis and then you deal with the climate issues. But however, even when we do that as South Africa, we are introducing a lot of renewable energy. If you look at the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program that is run by government, there's quite a lot of procurement that has been done. The removal of the licensing requirements when you want to build your renewable energy power plants by government. We have seen a lot of projects that have been registered, totaling above 12 gigawatts that will be coming on board.
So but the renewables are a fraction, aren't they? They remain a very small fraction at this point.
Yes, the renewables remain a small fraction, but we're seeing the ramp up in terms of renewables. For instance, with the government introducing the rebate program on the solar energy side of things, we've seen up to about 6 gigawatts of rooftop solar PV that has been installed by households and businesses, which is part of the reasons why we don't have load shedding today. And another reason why we don't have load shedding today is the fact that Eskom has been able to fix some of the coal fleet to operate at above 60% energy availability factor. The assumptions that were made in the IRP 2010 and also in the IRP 2019 was that we will have the coal fleet operating at 70% energy availability factor, and then we will decommission as time goes.
I don't want us to go too much into the technical language, especially because I think that's when we talk about energy, a lot of us get lost. Nonhle, but I want to come to you. Based on what Professor Mampoli was saying, it sounds like it's an absolutely necessary energy mix that includes coal.
You know, there's a statement that a professor just mentioned. He says that even if we do have the climate catastrophe, but we need to sort it out, the energy crisis first. Which means, and the question that I have, if the climate catastrophe, it kills us right now, there's no time for wait. Yeah. Now, if you said you did that later, where we will be? We'll be gone. The first priority, deal with the climate catastrophe. That's the thing that we all call upon our government, that we do have alternative to energy, which is renewable energy. But you can see that that's not an option, because coal, it's more easier for making profit, and it's more easier for BE that they can make money quick.
So it sounds, from what Nonhle is saying, that what we're basically dealing with here is a choice between life or electricity. Is that what's going on here?
It's more than that, actually. If you look at the composition of electricity, it's mainly made out of resources, which is your coal, which is your fossil fuels, which is your, what you call a hydro, right? And then the renewables are made out of the same, resources I'm talking about. They come out of coal, they come out of the, what you call it, electricity that is produced from coal, and the technology. To produce renewables today, it takes 6 times the amount of resources required than to use coal. So when we balance the two, one must understand it's not either or. Both are energy devils because they are causing environmental havoc. We're talking about greening the environment. We're talking about having clean air. But majority of people here are all wearing things that are not even green. The T-shirts, the clothing are all made out of synthetic fabrics, which are made out of oil, which are made out of what you call fossil fuels, and are made out from where? From petroleum. So some of the things we say, we don't actually bring them into the reality of the discussion and the discourse. On the electricity side of it, let me explain to you. You cannot have an electricity generation of a nation like South Africa without base load, coal, nuclear, hydro, or a mix of the others. And that is the reason why we're enjoying the no load shedding. Professor has just indicated that we're having no load shedding because of rooftop. No, that's not the case. We're having no load shedding because Eskom's coal power plants are working and the nuclear power plants are working.
You were shaking your head, you don't agree.
I totally do not agree. Yes, the initial onset when you have to install or actually build the panels or the wind turbines, you do need some fossil fuels depending on whether you get your ethylene from e-ethylene or from normal ethylene, which is based off of fossil fuels. Secondly, to generate the coal, the electricity via coal, you will have to continually mine for this coal, and you'll have to continually perpetuate the amount of emissions that is coming from these power stations. Whereby if you go to a renewable kind of power generation, you will be having a once-off offset of a lot of emissions, and then you'll have a continuation where there's little to none, and then maybe at the end where there has to be decommissioned, there would be emissions again. So it's an issue between continuous constant emissions from start to finish to decommission, where you, with the fossil fuel industry as is right now, versus emissions at the start and maybe some emissions at the end where there's little to no in the duration. So you cannot say that renewable energy is going to continuously pollute the people. That is erroneous.
Gateko, is there any way of getting away from an energy mix in this country that does not include coal?
One thing that I think we really need to recognize is, no doubt, coal is the biggest contributor to GDP in South Africa. Let's get that out of the way. Two is that right now, the sector employs at least 100,000 people. So we have people involved in this conversation. So recognizing the realities of our economy, an energy mix at this point in time is to help us realize that a just transition has to be progressive. While we shift to renewable energy sources, we need to take into consideration that we need to allow our economy to also shock absorb some of the things that are going to happen as this unfolds. So in the future, yes, I mean, as Oxfam, we are pushing also for considering and highly encouraging governments to phase out fossil fuels. And we really need to take into context that what's happening in the global south is far different from what's happening in the global north. So we cannot do it in a rapid manner, but it must take place. And when it takes place, it has to really put people at the center. So the idea that we have to deal with the crisis at hand before we tackle the energy crisis at hand, before we tackle environmental issues, is also null and void. These things happen concurrently.
Got you. Victor Manik, let me come to you. Deco talks about not a rapid phasing, or not having a situation where there's a rapid phasing out of coal. Are the current deadlines, for example, for the decommissioning of these coal-fired power stations realistic? Because some of them have had the lifespan extended from 2027 all the way to 2030.
Well, I think there are two reasons why the deadlines are extended. The one is to get measures into place to make the transition possible. So people get new jobs, new businesses are developed, there's a regional economic strategy to replace coal. So that's reasonable. However, if we don't do that and we just extend the life of the power stations, we do a lot of other things. One thing is the pollution of the people who live around these power stations. And I know there are people in this audience who live there and who suffer. You've seen in the... so that is a decision to extend the life of the power stations without having a health program by the Department of Health to deal with all that damage. And by the way, in the PCC meeting, a question was asked of Eskom whether they are prepared for a lawsuit from the people whose health will be impacted by this extension, or whether people must just pay for it themselves when their health is impacted.
Thank you for that. So we'll continue this conversation in a moment, and we'll look at what the people of Mpumalanga have been saying when it comes to the issue of how damage to the environment has affected them. They've also now been installing their own solar panels. You're watching The Big Debate. Hello and welcome to the big debate on S3, the SABC News Channel 404, YouTube and on TikTok. My name is Tembekile Mkhototo. For thousands of years, humankind learned to look after the earth that provides the basis for life. Well, in the 20th century, welcome back to the big debate on environmental justice. So since 2011, government has commissioned over 120 projects to generate electricity. That is from wind and the sun. But 55% of the projects are owned by a small number of foreign multinationals. As we saw in the opening of the show, residents in Mpumalanga have installed their own solar energy now without foreign ownership. So why is that important? We'll speak to them in a moment. But first, I want to bring in Sibongile Masina, whose story we also heard a bit of right at the top of the program. And Sibongile, if I can ask you to stand up, because as we talk about climate, it's easy to get caught up in the science and the numbers, but you lost your 11-year-old nephew to asthma, and you believe it was linked directly to the environmental damage where you stay.
Yes, it is true.
Tell us more about the situation in terms of your nephew and what has been going on with the environment there.
Okay, my nephew developed asthma when he was 2 months old, but he was born okay, but after 2 months he developed asthma. And we live at Malahleni, and we have a lot of mines and power stations. So after 2 months, we took him to the doctor, and he started using pumps. Then he used pumps until he was 11 years. But it was getting worse instead of getting better.
Right.
The pumps were not working by the time goes on. So,
and what was the quality of life in the environment that you think made it worse for him?
okay, in our place, at Malahleni, it's very much polluted. So he used to get attacks at night. So when I did the research, I found out that emissions are released mostly at night. So at night, he usually gets more attacks. You know.
I'm so sorry. What do you want to see going forward?
Okay, if we can close all the mines and start a renewable energy, which is the solar system, because right now I was also using coal to make fire, because where I stay, I don't have electricity, but I live at Malahleni, where they make electricity,
but you don't have
but
it.
I don't have electricity. So when VEM, which is the organization that I'm in, had the solar panels, I usually use the solar panels, so I've stopped using the coal, so the life is much better using the solar system.
Thank you so much, and we're so sorry to hear about the death of your nephew. Thank you for sharing. I want to come in here and bring you in, Promise, because you're also from Mpumalanga. You're installing your own solar panels. How is that better from what is done by perhaps some of the bigger companies?
Speaking of Mpumalanga, is easy when you are not living in Mpumalanga. But the people who are living in Mpumalanga, they are experiencing hell on earth. So for us, installing the solar PV or the solar panels, because we started raising awareness within our communities around the climate change on how we can deal with the situation, starting from an early stage. So we decided that when we engage with communities, the problem of questions that were coming was that, what can we do when the weather goes? So we decided that let us have an installation within our office so that each and every community member can come in to learn on how it works, how to take care of it, and how it works for your household. So that's why we have that installation. They come in to charge their phones. Those who are feeding their children with milk, they come and boil water. We just want to make them feel that they own it and to feel that this is usable. They can rely on it.
Thank you, sis. Jessica, let me bring you in. So you've got, on the one hand, the real life effects, right, of a filthy environment for all intents and purposes for people who live around these solar stations. You've got a community that's doing its best then to integrate solar, but the space is still not as friendly, as open as it should be to people such as Promise.
It's exactly that. I think that the cruelest thing that we have done in this country is to make people, force people to choose between a clean environment that they can live in and a livelihood. How dare we? We need to accelerate the transition to clean energy so that people can have a livelihood and live in a safe environment. I mean, just to go back to the point that Samson raised earlier, because he talked about China. China is a very interesting example because it talks about proportionality. The rate of investment in cleaner energy options far outweighs the continued investment in high carbon options. At the end of this 14th basic plan, they're going to be at more than 1,000 gigawatts of renewable energy just from solar and wind. This is where we need to be. And to go back to Andira's point, if you continue to have the majority of your mix being high carbon, then everything gets tainted with a high carbon. There is only one choice for South Africa.
But the other problem, though, Desikan, is that when you listen to government, especially in the last 2 months or so, it sometimes feels as if, especially in cabinet, that the ministers weren't on the same page, because you've got Gwede Mandasha who said, hang on a bit, we're not going to be able to rapidly phase out coal, while some of his colleagues were suggesting that actually it would be a much quicker process.
Yes, but that very same Gwede Mantashe is very clear that the end point is renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely.
He's absolutely clear about that.
The frustration for people was that they were getting confused in how it was going to happen, how soon.
Indeed. But that was the 6th administration. We are in the 7th administration now. So.
Is that your out? Is that your easy out tonight? No, Desikan says, I mean, there's a new administration coming in. Do you have any faith that this set of cabinet ministers, same president, will do better?
Unfortunately, I don't have any faith to the new cabinet that is coming, because every time you see, if you look, the ocean in South Africa is marked red for fossil fuel, the whole ocean in South Africa. It means that this is the way to go. While we are dying with the global warming, with the heat wave, with the floods, it's very clear that even the new cabinet is going to take where the others they left. That is the current situation. That is why when we talk about the climate catastrophe, let's put the lives of the people first before profit. If the coal is the one that it helps the energy in South Africa, we cannot have this crisis of energy that we have right now.
Samson Mampoli, we have a crisis, but there's no faith in the decision makers and the people who are supposed to lead us in the right direction.
I disagree in that, because we need to look at the plans at hand. And South Africa's plan towards decarbonization is very clear. We have the integrated resource plan that I talked about. It has just been revised. And the revised integrated resource plan talks about the just energy transition. And the language that we're now using is the balanced just energy transition. What we're saying is that don't shut down all the coal fleet now and do away with the jobs. You heard about the number of people that are employed in the coal sector as an example.
Hang on a minute, let's allow him to finish.
First of all, so that we can reach a balance. They say balance because ordinary people are still paying with their own health.
I want you to start over so we can all hear you. Please stand up for me. And
can they improve the cost of health, the cost of the water contamination, so that we can see how balanced coal is in the equation. Because currently people are paying for that, not them, not industry. That's why they say coal is cheap, because we are paying with our lives.
Samson Mampoli, you're saying coal is cheap, they're paying with their lives. How do you respond?
So what am I saying? Government has never said that we will continue with coal. Government has said...
Let's allow him to finish. Let's allow him to finish.
I need to be clear. I need to be clear. Look at the government plan, and I'm talking about the plan that is in place now, the revised integrated resource plan. It says,
let's allow him to finish. I'll open it up for questions. Thank you, sir.
The revised IRP, Tebegile, it says, let us extend the life of the coal fleet that can give us longevity, and then we deal with the energy crisis, have security of supply of electricity, so that we don't lose the jobs in the country. You must remember that the jobs are not only in the coal sector. They are also in other sectors where we're supplying electricity. When we have load shedding, the economy loses billions of rands. At some point, we're looking at about 500 billion that is being eroded together with jobs.
So it's a balancing of the scales.
So it's the balancing of the scales to say, in the future, if you look at the draft document that I'm talking about, it talks about ramping up renewables, tripling renewables in the future, so that we do away with coal and even bringing in the emission abatement technologies that we are working on as things stand.
How do we balance what's in the documents, what's in the plans, with the very real experiences of the people in these communities?
I mean, I've been hearing a lot of comments, and I must say, also from Prof, I'm a bit shaken by a few of the points that he made. Particularly, he spoke of the policy that we currently have. It's still a draft. It's not finalized yet. It's the electricity plan. For someone who doesn't know what that policy means that he's talking about, it's the electricity plan. And when you look at that electricity plan and you look for the 2023 draft and you compare it to the 2019 electricity plan, there's a huge difference. This one is mostly comprised of coal, but when you look at that one, it was mostly comprised of renewables. So it's like we are scaling back. So where are we actually going as a country? And then at the same time, when you look at the broader energy, I mean the legislative of it, we are supposed to be having an integrated energy plan. And we had to take government to court to actually bring into action that integrated energy plan. So the integrated energy plan, it's a broader energy plan for South Africa, which the IRP falls under. So they cannot have an electricity plan without having an energy plan, which looks into economical sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social development.
I want to hold on that point, actually, and bring you in, because what you want is the cancellation of coal in the mix. Am I right?
No, that's not
misconception.
Yes.
Okay, talk to me about how you see it all working.
Yes. So the Cancel Coal campaign, contrary to what most people believe, and maybe to some extent the name, is that we're cancelling all coal all at one go, which is not possible because South Africa is a developing country that is very highly reliant on coal. So what we are calling for is a just transition away from coal. The just transition, which will be gradual. We're not saying switch off coal overnight.
How gradual should gradual be?
Gradual in 2050. So there's different time periods. There's from now to 2030, which is in the IRP. The IRP does say that by 2030, we will have about, I think, 11,000 megawatts of renewables. We're currently sitting at 6,000 megawatts, which is, we're quite have some ground to cover. So what we're saying is that you need to, take into account that we are a developing country, but at the same time we are dealing with climate change. The health of mining-affected communities in Emalahleni is being affected, and so I think reiterating some of the points that have been made is that we cannot look at climate change and the electricity crisis and the just transition as three different things.
So they're all linked.
Instead, they are all very much connected, and what we need to do is to, take multiple approaches at once and make sure that we are protecting the health of mining-affected communities, but also at the same time transitioning away from coal in a manner that won't affect people who are reliant on the coal industry for jobs, for livelihoods, and for their communities as well.
So Ulrich, SABC gives us the goal. Is it achievable?
It's achievable given that this just energy transition is progressive and actually inclusive and transformative. Because it doesn't matter that you're just changing the plug where the energy is coming from coal to renewables, but the status quo remains the same. This is the same issue that we're having within our governmental bodies. Yes, we may change the ministers, we can shuffle up the cabinet, but the decision makers, the policy implementers within these ministries, they are the ones who are continually pushing for constant crisis averting policies such as, no, we have an energy shortfall. Let's get car power ship to resolve this crisis. When you look into the planning of that car power ship thingy, they're planning to have a crisis for 20 years. Who's planning to have a crisis for 20 years? Secondly, we do not have the infrastructure to go and plug and play onto these projects. None of these things are truly inclusive or truly transformative to develop our country forward. We do have the resources. We do have ample renewable resources. We've had ample opportunity to transform. We've had ample investment opportunities. We've turned them down because we are addicts to the fossil fuel industry. This gentleman has clearly stated that majority of our synthetic products is from fossil fuels. There are alternatives to get these things, but because our industrial revolution was built off of the backs of fossil fuels, we will not be able to divorce them because it's now status quo.
Let's leave it there, Ulrich, because when we come back, we will meet the invisible heroes of sustainability in South Africa. You're live with The Big Debate. For development, we seem to have forgotten the planet. Our oceans are polluted, our energy resources are depleting, and our climate is threatened, and the poor bear the brunt. South Africa is still addicted to coal. We borrowed billions to build 2 of the largest coal-fired power stations in the world. An ANC front company received corrupt payments from those deals. After all that, we still have load shedding. So are there any real alternatives, if you will? Can we empower the most vulnerable to play a leading role in the move towards a sustainable life? Can we make rich countries pay for the damage that they've already done to the planet? In short, how do we achieve environmental justice in South Africa? With me to discuss this are Desigan Naidu from the Presidential Climate Commission, Samson Mampweli of the National Energy Institute within government, Nkateko Chauke is from Oxfam, award-winning environmental activist Nonhle Mbutuma from Kolobeni is also with us. And we have Adil Chabeleng from Transform RSA, Lisa Makaula of Green Connection, Sibusiso Mazomba of Cancel Coal, and Victor Munich of Wits University. In the audience, we have climate scientists, activists, specialists, and of course, community leaders and residents. Welcome to you all. So, what is your view? Should we leave the oil in the soil and the coal in the hole? Before we start our debate, have a look at this. Welcome back to the big debate on environmental justice. Every time we fill up our rubbish bins, we generate waste, which then goes to landfills, which then pollutes our water sources in some areas. And land is running out for these sites in our cities. Can we avoid then drowning in a sea of toxic waste? Have a look.
Eva Mukwena is a mother, grandmother, and a second-generation reclaimer, following the legacy her mother set out.
I used to come here and sort normally. My mom used to go and work, then he'll leave the bags as you can see here. Then I'll come back from school following her, then come and sort. I'm not a waste picker because waste doesn't get recycled. I reclaim because when you throw away your laptop and it has a fault, I picked it up, I reclaim it, go and feast it and reuse it again.
In fact, we are making something from nothing. We're making sure that our families survive.
Eva's story challenges much of the stigma around recycling work. As a matriculant, Eva decided to leave her teaching job for an industry where she can be more in control.
I was an ECD teacher. Then I left because there was not enough money there. Then my mom taught me that no, you can make a living out of yourself. Then I followed the family legacy and came back to do recycling.
I used to work before. I used to work for Pick n Pay. After injury, I left the job. But now, the money that I was doing at Pick n Pay, I make it double here.
South Africa's metropolitans generate tens of millions of tons in waste every year, the bulk of which goes to landfills, causing environmental damage. Overall, our system of waste disposal hinges on the recycling work of reclaimers to keep it from collapse, but their work is still so far from the recognition it deserves.
People who had been earning maybe 200 rands from collecting were now earning about 50 rand. What was the reason? The reason was that they were being chased away from the streets, their materials were being confiscated. That process of organizing started and led to a march in 2017 and demands, that the city stops its privatization drive and to recognize the fact that there are invisible men and women who know more than anyone else in this country how waste moves.
We do support each other in most of the things, but the thing is that our own youth are the ones that don't understand.
As capitalism and consumer culture push us into an increasingly unstable world, it has become more urgent than ever to rethink our relationship with the land and its resources.
One reclaimer said that, we are the invisible heroes of the environment. We may not have intentionally started off by thinking of saving the planet, but actually by doing this work, reclaiming our dignity. That's exactly what we're doing.
Let's speak to one of the reclaimers you saw in that film, Eva Mokoena, who's with us. Mama, please stand up for us. You used to be a school teacher, used to be a teacher, now you're a reclaimer.
Yes.
Financially, there's a benefit. Environmentally, though, are you seeing a difference from the work that you're doing?
Yes, I am seeing a difference because ever since we started doing recycling, especially as the organizations, the stigma that people has on reclaimers has reduced. Especially in the high-earning area, you'll find that most of the people, they don't appreciate reclaimers. They take us as thieves, thugs, or people who are going to rob them. But since as the organization, we open people's eyes that we are human beings. We are fathers and mothers that are raising their kids with the mandate we do on recyclables.
And I want to bring in one of your colleagues, in fact, over here. Bablui, thank you so much, Ma'am Eva, thank you. You are also a reclaimer. You're a reclaimer. Why shouldn't the work of collecting refuse be left to, for example, in Johannesburg, we've got Pick It Up. Why should people like you be allowed more into the space?
I think we are human beings and we need to be treated with respect and dignity. In a study that was done by CSIR in 2016, it shows clearly that 80 to 90% of recyclables were collected by reclaimers, meaning the reclaimers have saved the municipality about 740 million in airspace. And now the problem is that municipalities does not acknowledge our existence. Normally when they're making decisions, they are excluding us. They marginalize us because of, they will normally say, no one need a degree to be a reclaimer. So you are nothing, you are just like that thing that is in the bin. So the level of intolerance is too high there, and we need to change that so that people can know that we also have to live life like any other normal person.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you both for the work that you're doing, by the way, in keeping your communities clean. Desigan, so it's clearly profitable, but people who are doing such important work are not getting their due recognition. There's intolerance, there is disrespect, according to Bablui. Why is that? What is being done to make sure that the formal structures, i.e. municipalities, actually incorporate such people to help clean up things?
Well, yeah, this is very critical, actually. I mean, firstly, salute to these people. And if you go to certain cultures in the world, if you go to Japan, for example, A standard thing that you will see in the street is as people are walking by, reclaimers, they stop and they bow because they recognize their importance in a society, and we need to do the same thing. These principles, incidentally, are built into our just transition framework, which is policy of this government. And it's about saying that we need the societal transformation we want to see isn't just an energy transition. We want to organize to be an inclusive society that actually respects the people, who ensure the sustainability into the system. We need to readjust the mechanisms of society to give much more scope for people to be able to be inside the space. The second point that I want to raise on this issue, and this is really critical, is that what is being demonstrated here is the closing of that loop of what a circular economy means. Waste is not an end. It is the beginning of a new part of the cycle. And the quicker we absorb that, the more chances that we have of being a much more sustainable society.
Adol, if the work of reclaimers has money, how much longer before the private sector swoops in and takes that away from communities such as these? Because that's always the fear, isn't it, in this country, that people start small, they do the work, then a big business sees a gap and takes over.
Look, on the issue of reclaiming, I mean, there's variety of waste. There's e-waste, there's environmental, there's waste that is used, there's waste in terms of copper that is being stolen and reclaimed and sold all over overseas. It's a huge profitable market. In terms of the waste which is collected for reclaiming in terms of electronics and other things, where they could even take plastics and refuse that they reuse to make other products out of it. It's a highly valuable but not that big to the extent where corporate, South Africa is interested. This is something that, companies should start supporting out of their corporate social responsibility to encourage communities that are doing this wonderful work. People out of Transform RSA who are doing work in terms of reclaiming and doing projects. We have projects in reclaiming as Transform RSA on the environment side of it. And not only that, helping families. I mean, the lady, gave an example of her, a child who died due to, environmental toxicity in terms of environmental. These things are unavoidable. We have to have a heart as a society to say, what can we do to support one another? But at the heart of corporate South Africa, at the heart of policy, and really this is where I really blame Presidential Climate Committee. They ate 10 billion, which was given over to Komati communities for reclaiming as well as for making sure that they can build alternative solutions. They ate it in what? Consultants, they spent it out flights and everything and paid themselves fortunes out of it. That money never went to the communities. So these are the people that must be blamed for those issues.
Just again, and really, let me take that. If millions of rands are budgeted and allocated for the betterment,
was squandered.
I mean, it's close enough. If that money is allocated, why are the people who it's meant to benefit not seeing the benefit?
Because it hasn't been allocated. Because the bulk of that money that we've been talking about is in the form of concessional loans. The PCC does not take any of these loans. The PCC is not government, it's not private sector either. It's a compact of stakeholders from right across society. That's what the PCC is. The people who are taking the loans.
There was 8.5 billion that was sent into South Africa for rehabilitation as well as ensuring the community of Komati. This is when they decommissioned the power plants. They said that communities must be given opportunities. So what they're telling us about the loans and everything, it's a doctrine.
That's completely wrong.
Hold on.
Completely wrong.
I'll give you each a chance.
It's a loan from the World Bank, and a portion of that money hasn't even been received by ESCOM. And it's not a just transition process. Komati was closed because it's an old power station and it was costing the economy a lot of money. It's not a gated process. So we need to be very clear. But we need to be very clear. The corporate industry has a responsibility in terms of
you're
waste.
Not making any point that you can respond right now. Because you're making a fundamental mistake. You are emotional on one point and you don't make a point.
I will allow you to respond.
No.
Sir,
you cannot misgive him permission.
Let me
make it very clear. We're not going to sit quiet when you're misleading people here. Money was taken and used.
I will allow you to respond.
Yes.
Sir, you've got the mic. Please stand up.
Exactly.
Thank you. I think we need to be very clear.
Let's
There's not changing money that went to Komati. Komati went to the World Bank to borrow more than $466 million. And that money, up until now, is not in Komati.
No,
And we need to be very clear.
Money. You're getting it wrong.
was never closed.
No, you're getting it wrong.
Thank you.
The UN,
Thank you both.
let me explain to you now.
Thank you both. I'll give you both a
Bring the
chance
point
when
here.
we come back.
You got it
You're
wrong.
live with the big debate. As you can see, things getting heated over the environment. Stay with us. Welcome back to the big debate on environmental justice. Do you think government is committed to a just energy transition, a renewable energy in that mix as well as a healthy environment? If you were watching earlier, you'd have seen that things got a bit tense as we try to make sense of that. Keen to hear your views at home as well as here in the audience as well. I want to bring in a few people who work in the environmental space, and one of them who is here, in fact, is Trisha. Trisha, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for being in. If I can ask you to stand up and give me your sense of your assessment, in fact, of the commitment from government on the issue of the just energy transition.
So I don't know if we know about this, but the just energy transition partnerships are a bit of hogwash. They're absolutely not working for us at all. In fact, what's happening is we talk about all this renewable energy that's being produced for us and for our country, but actually it's not. There's a massive project going on in the Northern Cape at the moment where it's renewable energy that's being produced to be created into green hydrogen, which then gets exported to Europe. None of that energy actually comes to us in South Africa. Meanwhile, people are losing their land because of this. People who have fought for so long to get those title deeds of their land from apartheid days, they're now losing their land because we need to produce green hydrogen to support the energy transition in the north.
Lisa?
I want to agree to that notion that Miss Trisha just raised. I mean, the just energy transition currently, I don't think it's just because communities are not being involved in many things. And I believe when we speak about the just energy transition, it should be a bottom-up approach, meaning that it should not leave anyone behind. You cannot make decisions on behalf of the people, but you have not consulted with the people. So now, looking also to just something that Usus Nontle just touched base on, when you're looking at our oceans, they are divided into blocks, and we are supposed to be on a path moving away from fossil fuels to renewables. But when you are looking at the ocean, it's currently divided in blocks, and those blocks are listed off to oil and gas companies. Okay. And when we're talking about oil and gas, that's still a fossil fuel. And now, people on the ground are going to be the ones that will have to bear the brunt and will have to face the dire consequences of climate change. And at the same time, there's been the reports that have been highlighted that, I mean, specifically on the International Energy Agency report, it's been highlighting that there should be no new investments when it comes to oil and gas because there's a possibility that assets could become stranded. So now, why would we be continuing to build infrastructure that is not going to be used in the future? And we're still contributing to a climate crisis. So, I mean, how is it just?
Thank you very much for that. Is it a just transition is one of the questions when you talk about this. When we return, final views from our guests, and we'll also hopefully be able to get a sense of what all of this would mean for Eskom. Don't go away. You're still with the big debate on environmental justice. We're nearing the end of part one of our debate, but fear not, the second part will be live on YouTube as soon as we've said goodbye to our television viewers. Just look for the Big Debate SA if you want to stay with us for the second hour. Before we wrap up this part, though, I want to give the panelists a chance to give us one last thought. And if I can start with you, Doctor.
Thank you. I think it's very important for us to realize the opportunity of the transition to transform not just the dirty energy system, but to also transform society. So let me give an example. There is a possibility for a renewable energy reindustrialization that can create jobs from mining to manufacturing to recycling. We are not paying attention to it, and the opportunity is slipping past because people have silly arguments.
We'll continue on that. I want us to flesh that out in the second part. Ngateko, briefly, please.
I guess from my end is the need to really balance ecological needs with socio-economic outcomes when we think of the just transition. But it's quite sad as well to see
one
how...
thought each. Remember, I said one thought each. We'll continue in the second hour.
Just we need to really move away from being superficial in our policy processes.
In 45 seconds, we're going to be kicked off TV. One thought each.
People's voices must be heard.
Thank you. One thought.
We've got to prioritize this IRP. Low carbon on the top, high carbon at the bottom.
Nanta, one thought?
Prioritize our livelihood.
Prof?
Transition must be just. We will have a lot of renewable energy installed in South Africa between now and 2050.
The just energy transition should create opportunities for transformation.
The just energy transition is an opportunity for us to change society as a whole and promote public participation, consultation with people on the ground. It has to be bottom up.
Okay, cool.
The polluters must pay, and those who have polluted must decommission themselves and not put the blame on us as taxpayers.
Thank you. Thank you. And Welcome back to the second hour of the big debate. I'm Tembekile Mkhototo. We're still talking about the just energy transition or environmental justice in South Africa as things stand today. We've spoken about the impact of coal in communities in Mpumalanga. And in this hour, as ever, we're going to give the audience as much an opportunity as possible to be able to speak directly to the issues and to the panelists. But before we get there, I want to bring in someone who's worked in the energy space for many years. David Nichols is here with us in the audience.